The dust-laden wind whipped across Trinity Wilson's face as she stared at the doctor's office door. Her hand still hovering over the brass knob, she couldn't bring herself to turn. His words echoed through her mind like a death knell. "You'll never work as a carpenter again, Miss Wilson. That fall shattered your leg in 3 places. You're lucky to be walking at all." Trinity had come to Monticello, Utah in 1882 with nothing but her father's tools and his lessons about craftsmanship. At 24, she'd built a respectable business in a town that had reluctantly accepted a female carpenter. And now, just like that, it was over. She finally let her hand drop to her side, the weight of her uncertain future nearly as crushing as the scaffolding that had collapsed beneath her 3 months ago. "Miss Wilson, they said I might find you here." Trinity turned to face the unfamiliar voice, squinting against the afternoon sun. The man stood tall against the horizon, his broad shoulders blocking the harsh light. His face was shadowed by a well-worn Stetson, but she could make out a strong jawline peppered with stubble. "I'm Wade Zimmerman," he continued, taking a step closer. "I heard you're the finest carpenter in the territory." A bitter laugh escaped Trinity's lips before she could stop it. "You heard wrong, Mr. Zimmerman. At least, you heard outdated information." He tilted his head, confusion evident in his expression. "Madam." Trinity gestured vaguely at her right leg, where the pain still burned deep in the bone despite the doctor's treatments. "That title belonged to me before this. Now I can't even climb a ladder without risking another fall." Wade's eyes, a startling blue against his sun-weathered skin, assessed her thoughtfully. "I just bought the old Haverson Ranch. Place needs a complete overhaul of the main house. Every carpenter between here and Santa Fe has turned me down, saying they're too busy with the Silver Boom buildings." Trinity shifted her weight, wincing as pain shot through her damaged leg. "Then I'll be one more disappointment. Good day, Mr. Zimmerman." She started to limp away, each step a reminder of what she'd lost, when his voice stopped her. "What if you didn't have to climb?" Trinity paused, not turning around. "Carpentry isn't a profession for cripples, Mr. Zimmerman." "I've got 2 strong legs and arms," he said, his voice closer now. "And I can follow directions. You have the skill and knowledge. Seems to me we could make a fair arrangement." Trinity turned slowly, suspicion evident in her green eyes. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "A partnership of sorts. You tell me what to do, how to do it, and I'll be your hands where you can't reach. We split the pay." "Why would you do that? You don't know me." Wade shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I need my ranch fixed by someone who knows what they're doing, and you need work. Simple as that." Trinity studied him. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. His clothes were well-worn but clean denim pants, a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms, and a leather vest that had seen better days. "It's not that simple," she finally replied. "People in town already thought it strange enough when I was working on my own. A woman giving orders to a man. They'd talk." "Let them," Wade said with a dismissive wave. "I've never much cared for gossip." Trinity hesitated. The doctor's bills had depleted nearly all her savings, and the prospect of losing her home loomed large. But more than that, the thought of never again feeling the satisfaction of transforming raw lumber into something beautiful and lasting had left a hole in her heart that nothing else could fill. "My tools are at my workshop behind my house," she said cautiously. "I'd need to see this ranch of yours before I agree to anything." Wade's smile broadened, transforming his entire face. "I've got my wagon. We could go now if you'd like." An hour later, Trinity stood in the center of what had once been a grand ranch house. The Haverson place had been abandoned for nearly 5 years after Old Man, Haverson died and his children moved east. The roof sagged in places, several windows were broken, and the porch looked ready to collapse entirely. "It's worse than I imagined," she murmured, running her hand along a cracked beam. "Is it beyond saving?" Wade asked, watching her closely. Trinity shook her head. "No building is beyond saving if you're willing to put in the work. But this is months of labor, Mr. Zimmerman." "Wade," he corrected, "and I've got nowhere else to be." "Why this place?" she asked, curious despite herself. "There are newer properties available." A shadow passed over his face. "My father worked this land when I was a boy. Before the Haversons, we lost it when the drought came in '62. He looked around the dilapidated room with something like reverence. "I made a promise I'd come back someday." Trinity nodded, understanding all too well the pull of promises and the weight of the past. She'd made her own promise to her father as he lay dying that she would use his tools to build a life that would make him proud. "I need to see the rest," she said. Wade led her through the house, pointing out the worst damage. Trinity noted each problem, mentally cataloging the materials they would need and the order in which repairs should be made. Despite the pain in her leg, she found herself excited by the challenge for the first time since her accident. "We'd start with the roof," she said as they completed the tour. "No point fixing anything else if rain's going to ruin it." "Does that mean you'll do it?" Wade asked. Trinity took a deep breath. "Half the payment up front for materials, and I won't be your servant if we're partners, we're equals." Wade extended his hand. "Deal." His grip was firm but gentle, his palm calloused from years of ranch work. Something fluttered in Trinity's chest, hope, perhaps, or something more dangerous. "We start tomorrow," she said, pulling her hand away. "Be at my workshop at dawn." The next morning, Trinity woke before sunrise, her leg aching fiercely. She massaged it gently, as the doctor had shown her, then dressed carefully in her work clothes, sturdy canvas pants, and a simple buttoned shirt that had scandalized the town's more proper ladies when she'd first arrived. She pulled her long auburn hair back into a tight braid and made her way to the small workshop behind her modest home. The familiar smell of sawdust and linseed oil embraced her as she lit the lantern. She ran her fingers over her tools, the planes, chisels, and saws that had been her father's, the measuring instruments she'd purchased with her first earnings. For a moment, doubt crept in. Could she really do this? Instruct someone else to perform the work her hands itched to do themselves? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Wade stood silhouetted against the lightening sky, looking far too alert for the early hour. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Ready to make a start?" Trinity nodded, suddenly nervous. "We'll need to load the wagon with tools and stop for lumber and supplies." Wade glanced around the workshop. "That's a lot to carry. Just point out what we need and I'll get it loaded." For the next hour, Trinity directed Wade as he carefully packed her tools into wooden crates and loaded them onto his wagon. He worked efficiently, showing a surprising respect for the implements of her trade. When they reached her larger tools, he lifted a heavy wooden toolbox without waiting for instruction. "This is the heaviest one yet," he remarked, adjusting his grip. Trinity reached out instinctively. "Be careful with that." "It contains my father's best," her words cut off as pain shot through her leg when she stepped forward too quickly. She would have fallen if Wade hadn't somehow managed to set down the toolbox and catch her arm in one fluid motion. "Steady," he said, his voice low with concern. His hand was warm on her arm, his grip secure. Trinity pulled away as soon as she regained her balance, embarrassed by her weakness. "I'm fine." Wade studied her for a moment, then nodded once. He picked up the toolbox again and carried it to the wagon without comment. Trinity was grateful for his discretion. By mid-morning, they had purchased the necessary supplies and were back at the ranch. Trinity sat on a sturdy crate, her injured legs stretched before her, as she instructed Wade on the first steps of repairing the roof. "The joists need reinforcing before we can even think about replacing the shingles," she explained, sketching the structure on a scrap of paper. "You'll need to remove the damaged boards first, but be careful, the whole thing could collapse if you take out too many at once." Wade nodded, studying her drawing with intense concentration. "I've repaired a barn roof or two, but nothing this complex. You'll have to be patient with me." "As long as you listen and don't take foolish risks, we'll manage," Trinity replied. Wade grinned. "Yes, madam." The next few days established their routine. Each morning, Wade would arrive at Trinity's house, help her into the wagon, and they would make the journey to the ranch. Trinity would direct the day's work from a chair positioned to give her the best view, calling out instructions and corrections as Wade tackled the roof repairs. To her surprise, he was a quick study. His hands, though more accustomed to roping cattle than driving nails, were steady and precise. He asked intelligent questions and rarely made the same mistake twice. By the end of the first week, the roof's structural supports had been reinforced, and they were ready to begin replacing the shingles. "You're doing well," Trinity admitted as they shared a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and apples in the shade of a cottonwood tree. Wade looked pleased at her approval. "I had a good teacher." We've barely begun," Trinity replied, brushing crumbs from her lap. "My father," Wade clarified. "He believed a man should know how to build and fix things with his own hands, said it was the only way to truly own something." Trinity nodded. "My father said something similar. He taught me my first dovetail joint when I was 9 years old." 9? Wade raised his eyebrows. "I was still more interested in catching frogs at that age." Trinity smiled despite herself. "I caught plenty of those too, but my father's workshop was my favorite place in the world." "What brought you to Monticello?" Wade asked, leaning back against the tree trunk. "It's not exactly known for its opportunities." Trinity's smile faded. "My father died 3 years ago. Consumption. The town where we lived had too many memories and too many people who thought a woman had no business taking over a man's trade." She shrugged. "I heard Monticello needed skilled workers for the new buildings going up. Thought I'd have a better chance starting fresh where no one knew me." "And did you have a better chance?" Trinity considered the question. "Some still wouldn't hire me when they realized I wasn't just the carpenter's assistant, but others cared more about the quality of the work than who was holding the tools." She gestured toward her leg. "Until this happened." Wade was quiet for a moment. "How did it happen? The accident?" Trinity tensed. She'd avoided telling the full story to anyone in town, letting them believe it was simply bad luck rather than malice. "I was working on the new schoolhouse," she began slowly. "The scaffolding collapsed. At first, everyone thought the wood was rotten, but I'd checked it myself that morning." She paused, the memory still raw. "Later, I found saw marks on the broken supports. Someone had deliberately weakened them." Wade's expression darkened. "Who would do such a thing? I have my suspicions." Eric Blackwell had bid on the same job and lost. He'd made no secret of thinking a woman had no place in carpentry. Trinity shrugged, trying to appear more indifferent than she felt. "But I couldn't prove anything. And no one investigated." Wade's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "Sheriff Cooper asked a few questions, but in the end, it was dismissed as an accident." Trinity met Wade's gaze steadily. "I survived. That's what matters." Wade looked like he wanted to say more, but instead stood and offered his hand. "We should get back to work if we want to finish the north section of the roof today." Trinity allowed him to help her up, noticing how carefully he supported her weight until she found her balance. His consideration, offered without pity, made that strange flutter return to her chest. As the days passed, Trinity found herself looking forward to the long hours at the ranch. Wade never complained about her exacting standards or the repetitive nature of some tasks. Instead, he approached each new challenge with determination, and often a joke that would make her laugh despite herself. They fell into an easy rhythm of work, conversation, and companionable silences. Trinity began bringing her sketchbook, drafting improvements to the house beyond the necessary, repairs a wider front porch with a proper railing, built-in cabinets for the kitchen, a window seat in what would become the main bedroom. "You have vision," Wade remarked one evening as he studied her drawings by lamplight. "You don't just see what is, you see what could be." Trinity felt her cheeks warm at the admiration in his voice. "It's just practical thinking." Wade shook his head. "It's more than that." He traced the lines of her porch design with a calloused finger. "You're creating something that will last generations." The words echoed what her father had often said, and Trinity felt an unexpected lump in her throat. She cleared it quickly. "If we ever finish the roof, that is." Wade laughed. "We're making good progress. Though I admit, I never thought I'd know this much about roof pitch and shingle overlap. Are you complaining, Mr. Zimmerman?" Trinity asked, arching an eyebrow. "Not in the slightest, Miss Wilson." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "I'm finding I have a talent for carpentry, or at least for following your instructions." 2 weeks into their partnership, a spring storm blew in unexpectedly. Dark clouds gathered rapidly as they worked, and the first fat raindrops began to fall just as they were securing a tarpaulin over the section of roof still under repair. "We need to get to shelter," Wade called over the rising wind. "This is going to be a bad one." Trinity nodded, already gathering her drawings and tools. Wade quickly helped her down from her perch and led her toward the barn, which was in better condition than the house. They had just reached it when the skies opened fully, rain coming down in blinding sheets. Wade pushed the heavy door open and they hurried inside. Trinity's leg, which had been improving, throbbed from the sudden exertion and the dampness in the air. She tried to hide her discomfort, but Wade noticed her wince. "Here, sit down," he said, clearing a space on a bench along the wall. "I'll see if there's anything dry to build a fire." "We can't risk a fire in the barn," Trinity protested. Wade gestured toward a small stone fireplace in the corner. "The previous owners kept a tack room in here. It's safe enough if we're careful." Trinity nodded, relieved at the prospect of warmth. Wade disappeared into the shadowy recesses of the barn and returned moments later with an armful of relatively dry wood and some old newspapers. He quickly built a small fire, working with the same careful precision he'd shown in their carpentry work. As the flames caught, golden light filled the space around them. Trinity became aware of her soaked clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Her hair, having partially escaped its braid during their dash to the barn, hung in damp tendrils around her face. Wade wasn't in much better condition. His shirt was plastered to his chest, revealing the muscled contours beneath. He ran a hand through his wet hair, pushing it back from his forehead, and Trinity found herself unable to look away. "You're shivering," he observed, concern etching his features. Trinity hugged herself tighter. "I'll be fine once I warm up." Wade disappeared again, returning with a worn but clean horse blanket. "It's the best I can offer," he said apologetically, draping it around her shoulders. "Thank you," Trinity murmured, pulling the blanket close. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and she felt a jolt that had nothing to do with the cold. Wade sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, but not so close as to be improper. They watched the fire in silence for a few moments, listening to the rain pounding on the barn roof. Sounds like the repairs are holding, Wade commented. Trinity smiled. Your work is good. Our work, he corrected. I couldn't have done it without you. The simple acknowledgement warmed her more than the fire. So many men would have taken full credit once the physical labor was complete, but Wade consistently honored her contribution. Why did you really offer this arrangement? Trinity asked suddenly. There are other ways you could have gotten your house repaired. Wade considered her question, his expression thoughtful. When I first came back to Monticello, I heard about the woman carpenter who could match any man's skill. I was curious. Then I heard about your accident, how the doctor said you'd never work again. He met her gaze directly. I know what it's like to have something you love taken away. My wife died of fever 3 years ago. For a long time after, I couldn't see the point in anything. I'm sorry, Trinity said softly, surprised by his candor and the revelation. Wade nodded his acknowledgement. When I saw you coming out of the doctor's office that day, looking like the world had ended, I recognized that feeling. I thought maybe we could help each other. A small, self-deprecating smile crossed his lips. Though I didn't plan out exactly what I would say, "We worked together" just came out. Trinity studied his profile in the firelight, seeing him with new eyes. Not just as the man who had offered her a way back to her craft, but as someone who understood loss and perseverance. It was the right thing to say, she told him quietly. The storm continued well into the evening, eventually forcing them to accept that they would need to spend the night in the barn. Wade made Trinity as comfortable as possible, fashioning a bed from clean straw and spare blankets kept in the tack room, while he took a position near the door. To keep watch, he explained, though there was little danger beyond the weather itself. Trinity knew it was also to maintain propriety. Despite their working relationship, they were unmarried man and woman spending the night alone together, something that would scandalize the town if known. She appreciated his consideration of her reputation, even as a small, traitorous part of her wished he were closer. Morning brought clear skies and the realization that the road back to town would be muddy and treacherous for at least a day. They inspected the roof, relieved to find their repairs had held despite the storm's fury, then continued their work. By mid-afternoon, Trinity's leg was paining her more than usual. She had tried to hide her discomfort, but Wade's increasingly concerned glances told her she wasn't succeeding. You need to rest, he finally said, setting down his hammer with a decisive thud. Trinity shook her head stubbornly. We're almost finished with this section, and it will still be here tomorrow. Wade's tone brooked no argument. You've been pushing too hard. I'm fine, Trinity insisted, but even as the words left her mouth, a particularly sharp pain made her flinch visibly. Wade crossed to her side in 3 long strides. You're not fine, and I won't watch you hurt yourself further. His voice softened. Please, Trinity, let me help you inside. It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it momentarily distracted her from the pain. Before she could formulate a response, Wade had carefully lifted her into his arms. What are you doing? She gasped, automatically wrapping her arms around his neck to steady herself. Carrying you inside where you can rest properly, he replied, already walking toward the house. The parlor is finished enough to be comfortable. Trinity wanted to protest, to maintain the independence she had fought so hard for, but the relief of being off her throbbing leg was too great. She allowed herself to relax slightly in his arms, noting absently how securely he held her, as if she weighed nothing at all. Wade carried her into the parlor and gently set her on the newly repaired settee they had positioned near the fireplace. He quickly built a fire to ward off the spring chill, then disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a cup of water. Drink this while I find something for the pain, he said. Trinity accepted the cup, watching as Wade retrieved a small leather pouch from his saddlebag. He returned to her side and withdrew a small paper packet. "Willow bark," he explained. "My mother taught me about herbs. It's not as strong as laudanum, but it helps with pain and won't leave you fuddled." Trinity hesitated only briefly before accepting the remedy. Wade watched as she swallowed it, his expression a mixture of concern and something warmer that made her pulse quicken. "Thank you," she said, handing back the empty cup. Wade nodded, settling into a chair across from her. "Rest. I'll wake you when it's time to head back to town." Trinity meant to protest that she wasn't tired, but the events of the past 2 days, combined with the pain and the soothing warmth of the fire, conspired against her. Her eyes grew heavy, and she drifted into sleep with the awareness of Wade's protective presence nearby. She woke to twilight shadows and the gentle pressure of a blanket being tucked around her. Wade's face was close to hers, his expression soft in the fading light. "I didn't mean to wake you," he said quietly. "What time is it?" Trinity asked, her voice husky with sleep. "Just past sunset." "How's the leg?" Trinity shifted, testing. "Better." The willow bark helped. Wade straightened, moving back to give her space. "Good. I've made some supper if you're hungry. Nothing fancy, just beans and bacon." Trinity sat up carefully, noticing that the worst of the pain had indeed subsided. "That sounds perfect." They ate at the small table Wade had moved into the parlor for her comfort, the simple meal tasting better than it had any right to after a long day's work. Trinity found herself studying Wade's hands as he ate, strong, capable hands that had proved surprisingly gentle when needed. "You're staring," Wade observed, a hint of amusement in his voice. Trinity felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I was just thinking that you've taken to carpentry well. You have good hands for it." Now it was Wade's turn to look slightly flustered. "High praise coming from you." An odd tension settled between them, not uncomfortable but charged with something neither seemed ready to acknowledge. Trinity broke it by asking about his plans for the ranch once the house was repaired. "I've bought a small herd to start," Wade explained, visibly relaxing into the safer topic. "Nothing too ambitious at first, but the land is good for grazing. With careful management, it could support 3 times as many cattle within a few years." "You've thought it through," Trinity noted. Wade nodded. "I've worked on enough ranches to know what succeeds and what fails. The key is patience and not overreaching." "Wise words for any endeavor," Trinity said. "Including recovery," Wade replied, his gaze meaningful. "You won't heal if you push too hard too soon." Trinity sighed, recognizing the truth in his words. "It's difficult to be patient when there's so much to do." "We have time," Wade said simply. The way he said "we" made something flutter in Trinity's chest again. She was beginning to recognize the feeling for what it was, though she wasn't ready to give it a name. The road was passable enough by the following afternoon for them to return to town. Wade insisted on driving Trinity directly to her door, helping her down from the wagon with careful hands. "Rest tomorrow," he instructed as he handed her the small pouch of willow bark. "I'll come by the day after with the wagon, and we can continue if you're feeling better." Trinity wanted to argue but knew he was right. "Thank you, Wade, for everything." He tipped his hat, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Just being a good partner, Miss Wilson." As she watched him drive away, Trinity acknowledged to herself that their partnership had become something more than a simple business arrangement, at least for her. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. The next day, confined to rest as promised, Trinity found herself sketching Wade's face instead of house plans. She quickly put the drawing aside when a knock at her door announced a visitor. Margaret Cooper, the sheriff's wife and one of the few women in Monticello who had consistently shown Trinity kindness, stood on her porch with a basket in hand. "I heard you were back in town," Margaret said by way of greeting. "Thought you might appreciate some fresh bread and preserves." Trinity invited her in, grateful for both the company and the food. As they settled at her small kitchen table, Margaret's curious gaze took in the carpentry tools visible through the open door to the workshop. "I've been hearing interesting rumors," Margaret said casually. "About you and the new rancher, Mr. Zimmerman." Trinity tensed. "We have a business arrangement. I'm helping him repair the old Haverson place." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "From what I understand, he's doing the physical work while you direct. Quite an unusual partnership." "My injury makes climbing impossible," Trinity explained, "but my knowledge is intact." "And Mr. Zimmerman doesn't mind taking instruction from a woman?" Margaret asked, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp with interest. "He seems to value skill over convention," Trinity replied carefully. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. "He sounds like an unusual man." "He is," Trinity admitted before she could stop herself. A knowing smile curved Margaret's lips. "I see." Trinity busied herself with pouring tea, hoping to hide the flush she could feel rising to her cheeks. "It's not what you're thinking. We're just working together." "Of course," Margaret agreed too readily. After a moment she added, "Though he would be a good match. Respectable, hardworking, and from what I hear, not hard on the eyes either." "Margaret." Trinity protested, but she couldn't help the small smile that escaped. "Just making an observation," Margaret said innocently. "The town will talk regardless. Might as well give them something worth talking about." After Margaret left, Trinity found herself contemplating her words. The town would indeed talk about her arrangement with Wade. They probably already were. In a place like Monticello, any deviation from the norm became fodder for gossip. Trinity had endured it when she first arrived and established her business, and again after her accident. She had learned to ignore it for the most part, but Margaret had raised a valid point. If people were going to talk anyway, why should Trinity deny herself the possibility of something more with Wade? The answer came swiftly: fear. Fear of rejection, fear of losing the working relationship they had built, fear of risking her heart only to have it broken. 2 days later, true to his word, Wade arrived with the wagon. Trinity's leg had improved with rest, though she still walked with a pronounced limp. Wade noticed immediately. "You're moving better," he observed as he helped her into the wagon. Trinity nodded. "The rest helped. Thank you for insisting on it." Wade's smile was warm. "I'm learning when to push and when to listen where you're concerned." The comment, casual as it was, implied a future one where Wade would continue learning about her, understanding her. Trinity found herself hoping that future would come to pass. At the ranch, they fell back into their routine, though Wade was more attentive to Trinity's comfort than before. He had constructed a better chair for her, with a cushioned seat and a footrest that kept her injured leg elevated. He brought her water regularly and insisted on breaks when he noticed her massaging her leg. As spring warmed into early summer, the house transformation progressed steadily. The roof was finally complete, the exterior walls repaired and freshly painted, and they had moved on to the interior rooms. Trinity's designs came to life under their combined efforts, her direction, and Wade's increasingly skilled hands. "This window seat is turning out even better than your drawing," Wade remarked one afternoon as he fitted the last piece of the built-in bookcase that would flank it. Trinity ran her hand over the smooth wood, appreciating the precise joinery and careful finishing. "You've become quite the craftsman," Wade smiled, pleasure evident in his eyes. "I had an excellent teacher." "The student has nearly surpassed the master," Trinity said, only half joking. Wade's skill had developed remarkably over the months they had worked together. "Never," Wade replied, suddenly serious. I can follow plans and execute techniques, but I don't have your vision or instinct." He hesitated, then added, "We make a good team, Trinity, better than I ever expected." The way he said her name sent warmth spreading through her chest. "Yes, we do," she agreed softly. That evening, as Wade was helping Trinity into the wagon for the return to town, her foot slipped on the step. Wade caught her immediately, strong arms wrapping around her waist to steady her. Trinity found herself pressed against his chest, her hands clutching his shoulders, their faces inches apart. For a long moment, neither moved. Trinity could feel Wade's heartbeat, rapid beneath her palms. His eyes, blue as a summer sky, searched hers with a question she wasn't ready to answer. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice deeper than usual. "I know," Trinity whispered back, and she meant more than just his physical support. Slowly, reluctantly, Wade helped her the rest of the way into the wagon, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary before he released her and walked around to take his place at the reins. The journey back to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached Trinity's house, Wade helped her down with careful hands that no longer seemed purely practical. "Tomorrow?" he asked, still holding her hand after she was safely on the ground. Trinity nodded, unable to find her voice for a moment. "Tomorrow," she finally managed. That night, Trinity lay awake long after she should have been sleeping, reliving the moment in Wade's arms, wondering what might have happened if either of them had been brave enough to close the distance between them. The next day brought an unexpected complication. As Wade and Trinity worked on finishing the parlor wainscoting, the sound of approaching horses interrupted their concentration. Wade moved to the window, his expression darkening as he recognized the visitors. "Eric Blackwell and some of his friends," he informed Trinity, his voice tight. "4 of them." Trinity tensed, setting aside her measuring tools. Eric Blackwell was the man she suspected of sabotaging her scaffolding, a rival carpenter who had made no secret of his belief that women had no place in his profession. What would they want here? She wondered aloud, though a knot of dread was already forming in her stomach. "Nothing good," Wade replied grimly. He moved to the door, positioning himself so that he blocked the entrance. "Stay inside." Trinity ignored his instruction, limping to stand beside him as the riders approached the house. Eric Blackwell was in the lead, his angular face set in lines of contempt beneath his black hat. The men with him were ranch hands from neighboring properties, rough men known for their willingness to follow Blackwell's lead. "Zimmerman," Blackwell called as they reined their horses to a stop. "Heard you were fixing up this old place." His gaze shifted to Trinity, and his lip curled. "With help from the crippled lady carpenter." Wade's body tensed beside Trinity, but his voice remained controlled when he replied. "Miss Wilson is a skilled professional who's been kind enough to partner with me on this project. What can I do for you, Blackwell?" Blackwell dismounted, his boots raising small clouds of dust as he approached. "Just thought I'd see for myself if the rumors were true. They're saying in town that you're letting a woman tell you how to build your house." He laughed, a harsh sound echoed by his companions. "Didn't figure you for the type to take orders from a skirt." Trinity felt Wade's anger in the rigidity of his posture, though his expression remained neutral. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwell, if you've come to offer your services, I'm afraid we don't require them. If you've come merely to insult me, you're wasting your time and ours." Blackwell's eyes narrowed. "Still got a sharp tongue, I see. Didn't learn your lesson when that scaffolding came down, did you?" The admission, casual as it was, confirmed what Trinity had long suspected. Wade made a sudden movement beside her, and she placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Are you admitting to sabotage, Mr. Blackwell?" she asked calmly. "That would be a serious crime." Blackwell smirked. Accidents happen all the time in construction, especially when people take on jobs they're not suited for. Wade stepped forward, shaking off Trinity's hand. I think you should leave, Blackwell, now. Or what? Blackwell challenged, his hand drifting toward the gun at his hip. Or I'll escort you off my property, Wade replied evenly. And if you ever threaten Miss Wilson again, directly or indirectly, you'll answer to me. The two men faced each other, tension crackling between them. Blackwell was taller, but Wade had the solid build of a man accustomed to physical labor. Neither seemed inclined to back down. Finally, Blackwell laughed again, though there was no humor in it. Keep your broken carpenter, Zimmerman, but don't come crying to me when your house falls down around your ears. He turned to his companions. Let's go, boys. Nothing worth seeing here. They mounted and rode away, but not before Blackwell called back over his shoulder, Watch your back, Zimmerman, and hers. When they were out of sight, Trinity released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Wade turned to her, concern etched across his features. Are you all right? Trinity nodded, though she felt shaken. I'm fine, but he as good as admitted to causing my accident. I should go to the sheriff, Wade said, his jaw tight with anger. With what proof? Trinity asked bitterly. His word against mine, and he'll deny everything. Wade ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't like the way he threatened you, or us. Blackwell talks big, but he's a coward at heart, Trinity said, with more confidence than she felt. He won't do anything that might be traced back to him. Wade didn't look convinced. I'm taking you home, and then I'm staying there tonight. I don't want you alone after this. Trinity started to protest, then reconsidered. The thought of Blackwell seeking further revenge was frightening, especially given what he had already done. And the idea of Wade's protective presence was more appealing than she cared to admit. Just for tonight, she conceded. You can sleep in the workshop. Wade nodded, already gathering their things. Let's go before it gets any later. That night, after checking that all doors and windows were secure, Wade settled in the workshop while Trinity tried to sleep in her small bedroom. Despite her exhaustion, rest eluded her. The confrontation with Blackwell had resurrected memories of her accident, the terrifying moment when the scaffolding gave way beneath her. The sickening sensation of falling, the white-hot pain when she hit the ground. She must have cried out in her sleep, for suddenly Wade was there, his hand gentle on her shoulder as he woke her from the nightmare. Trinity, he called softly. You're safe. It was just a dream. Trinity sat up, disoriented and trembling. Wade sat on the edge of the bed, a respectful distance away but close enough that she could feel his warmth. I was falling again, she whispered, hugging her arms around herself. Without a word, Wade moved closer and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Trinity leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. They stayed that way for several minutes until her shaking subsided. I should let you get back to sleep, Wade said finally, his voice a rumble she could feel through his chest. Trinity clutched his shirt before he could move away. Stay, she said. Just until I fall asleep again. Wade hesitated, clearly torn between propriety and her need. Trinity, please, she interrupted. I don't want to be alone with the dreams. After a moment, Wade nodded. He sat with his back against the headboard, and Trinity cautiously settled beside him, her head resting against his shoulder. His arm came around her again, holding her securely. Sleep, he murmured. I'll keep the nightmares away. Protected by his presence, Trinity drifted into a dreamless sleep. She woke to early morning light and the realization that Wade was gone. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined his comfort in the night, but the faint impression on the pillow beside hers confirmed his presence. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen, and Trinity rose carefully, her leg stiff but less painful than it had been in weeks. Wade stood at her small stove, his back to her as he tended to a pan of sizzling bacon. He had removed his vest and rolled up his sleeves, revealing muscular forearms dusted with golden hair. Trinity took a moment to simply observe him, appreciating the ease with which he moved in her space. As if sensing her presence, Wade turned. His hair was slightly rumpled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and Trinity thought he had never looked more handsome. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "Hope you don't mind me making breakfast." Trinity shook her head. "Not at all. It smells wonderful." Wade's gaze was assessing as she moved to the table. "You're walking better today." "It feels stronger," Trinity agreed. "Dr. Matthews said it would improve with time, but I was beginning to doubt him." Wade set a plate of bacon and eggs before her, then poured coffee for them both before taking the seat across from hers. "You're healing. Maybe not as quickly as you'd like, but it's happening." Trinity sipped her coffee, noting with surprise that he had remembered exactly how she took it with just a touch of sugar. "I've been thinking about what happened yesterday with Blackwell." Wade's expression darkened. "As have I. We can't let him frighten us," Trinity continued. "If we show weakness, he wins. This isn't about winning or losing, Trinity. It's about your safety." Trinity reached across the table to touch his hand. "Our safety. He threatened you too." Wade turned his hand to clasp hers. "I can handle Blackwell and his type." "So can I," Trinity insisted. "I've been dealing with men like him my entire career." Wade's thumb traced small circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "I know you're strong, but you don't have to face everything alone anymore." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Trinity met Wade's gaze and saw in it everything he wasn't saying aloud: his admiration, his concern, and something deeper that made her heart race. "Neither do you," she replied softly. They finished breakfast in companionable silence, both aware that something fundamental had shifted between them. Over the next few weeks, their work on the house continued without further incidents from Blackwell, though Wade remained vigilant. He insisted on escorting Trinity home each evening and often found reasons to check on her during the night, though he no longer stayed inside. Trinity's leg continued to improve, allowing her to move around the house more freely, though she still couldn't climb ladders or kneel for long periods. Wade adjusted their work accordingly, taking on tasks that would have been too strenuous for her while ensuring she remained integral to each day's progress. By mid-July, the main house was nearly complete. They stood together in the finished kitchen, admiring the cabinets Wade had built to Trinity's specifications. "It's better than I imagined," Trinity said, running her hand along the smooth countertop. "You've created something beautiful here." "We created it," Wade corrected gently. "This is as much your house as it is mine, Trinity." The statement caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" Wade took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I mean that I can't imagine living here without you. The truth is, I started falling in love with you the first day we worked together, when you corrected my roof angle measurements without a moment's hesitation." Trinity stared at him, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "Wade, please, let me finish," he said quickly. "I know this might seem sudden or inappropriate given our working relationship, but these months together have been the happiest of my life since Eliza died. You're brilliant and strong and stubborn in all the best ways." He smiled, a tender expression that made her breath catch. "I love the way you insist on precision in every joint. I love how your eyes light up when you're explaining a new design. I love your determination to overcome every obstacle." Wade took her hands in his. "I love you, Trinity Wilson, and if you don't feel the same, I'll understand. We can continue as partners, or you can walk away entirely, but I had to tell you the truth." Trinity felt tears gathering in her eyes. For so long she had protected herself, focusing solely on proving her worth through her work. The accident had nearly destroyed that identity, leaving her adrift until Wade offered his hands in service to her vision. Now he was offering his heart as well, and the realization of how deeply she wanted to accept it overwhelmed her. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Wade's grip on her hands tightened slightly. "Of what?" "Of losing myself again. Of depending on someone who might leave." She met his gaze directly. "Of loving you as much as I already do and having it hurt even more when it ends." Wade's expression transformed, hope blazing in his eyes. "It doesn't have to end, Trinity. And loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself, it means finding the parts of yourself you never knew were missing." He released one of her hands to gently touch her cheek. "We're partners. That doesn't change just because our hearts are involved now, too." Trinity leaned into his touch, allowing herself to accept the comfort and promise it held. "I do love you, Wade. I think I have since you carried my tools and said, 'We work together.'" Wade's smile was radiant as he slowly leaned closer, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Trinity closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally parted, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. "Build a life with me, Trinity. We can run the ranch together, and you can have the largest workshop in the territory for your carpentry. We'll make furniture, repair buildings, whatever you want to create." Trinity's laugh was shaky with emotion. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Wade insisted. "We already know we work well together. The rest is just details." Trinity thought of all the obstacles they had overcome: her injury, Blackwell's threats, the challenge of rebuilding not just the house but her confidence. Through it all, Wade had been steadfast, respectful of her knowledge while supporting her physically when needed. He had never once made her feel less for her limitations. Instead, he had found ways to complement her strengths and compensate for her temporary weaknesses. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I'll marry you." Wade lifted her into his arms and spun her around, mindful of her leg even in his exuberance. His kiss was joyful, a promise of the future they would build together. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Monticello. Most reactions were positive. Margaret Cooper was particularly smug about having predicted it, though some, like Blackwell, made snide remarks about Wade marrying his foreman. Trinity and Wade ignored the detractors, focusing instead on completing the house and planning their life together. They were married in early August in a simple ceremony in the town church, with Margaret and Sheriff Cooper as witnesses. After the wedding, Wade carried Trinity across the threshold of their finished home, a moment they had built toward in more ways than one. The house that had once been dilapidated and abandoned now stood strong and beautiful, a testament to their combined skills and shared vision. That night, as they lay together in the master bedroom with its carefully crafted window seat and built-in bookshelves, Wade traced gentle fingers along Trinity's arm. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Trinity smiled. "I was remembering what the doctor told me after my accident, that I'd never work as a carpenter again. He wasn't entirely wrong." Wade raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "I'm not just a carpenter now," Trinity explained. "I'm a designer, a teacher, a partner. My skills have expanded beyond what I thought possible." She turned to face him fully. "When that scaffolding collapsed, I thought my life was over, but it was just changing course." Wade pulled her closer. "To think I might never have met you if not for that accident." "Everything happens for a reason, I suppose," Trinity mused. "Though I could have done without the broken leg." Wade chuckled, then grew serious. "I meant what I said about the workshop. I've already started clearing the old storage barn. With some modifications, it will make an excellent carpentry shop, big enough for both of us to work comfortably. Trinity's heart swelled with love for this man who so completely understood her needs. Have you started designing the layout yet? I thought we'd do that together, Wade replied. After all, you're the one with the vision. And you're the one with the strong back, Trinity teased. Among other attributes, Wade murmured, leaning in to kiss her. Trinity wrapped her arms around him, marveling at how completely her life had transformed in just a few months. From despair to hope, from isolation to partnership, from loss to love, the journey had been unexpected but perfect in its way. By the following spring, their life had settled into a pleasant rhythm. The ranch was thriving under Wade's management, while Trinity had established a small but growing furniture business from their newly completed workshop. Her leg had healed enough that she could handle most carpentry tasks herself, though Wade still assisted with the heaviest lifting. They had also become known for their skill in restoring old buildings. Several property owners in Monticello had commissioned them to repair and renovate structures that had fallen into disrepair, appreciating the blend of Trinity's design expertise and Wade's growing carpentry skills. Even Eric Blackwell had been forced to acknowledge their success, especially after Sheriff Cooper had finally investigated Trinity's accident more thoroughly. While there hadn't been enough evidence to arrest Blackwell, the public scrutiny had damaged his reputation and business considerably. One warm afternoon, as Trinity was putting the finishing touches on a rocking chair commissioned by the mayor's wife, Wade entered the workshop with an envelope in hand. "Letter from my sister in Denver," he announced, leaning against her workbench. "She's finally coming to visit next month. Says she can't wait to meet the woman who, and I quote, tamed my wild brother and taught him a respectable trade." Trinity smiled, setting aside her sandpaper. "I look forward to meeting her, though I take exception to the taming part. You were hardly wild when I met you." Wade laughed. "You didn't know me in my younger days." He watched as Trinity tested the smoothness of the chair's arm. "That's looking beautiful. Mrs. Parker will be pleased." "I hope so," Trinity replied. "It's the first piece I've completed entirely on my own since the accident." Pride shone in Wade's eyes. "I never doubted you'd get here." Trinity stood, brushing sawdust from her apron. "Only because you didn't let me doubt myself." Wade crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You would have found your way eventually with or without me. You're too stubborn to let anything keep you down for long." "Perhaps," Trinity conceded, "but I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone." Wade kissed her softly. "Me too." He stepped back, a mysterious smile playing at his lips. "I have something to show you at the house." Curious, Trinity followed him across the yard to the main house. Inside, Wade led her to the small room adjacent to their bedroom that they had been using for storage. "Close your eyes," he instructed. Trinity complied, hearing the creak of the door as Wade opened it. His hands settled gently on her shoulders as he guided her forward a few steps. "All right, you can look now," he said. Trinity opened her eyes and gasped. The storage room had been transformed. A beautiful cherry wood crib stood in the center, flanked by a matching rocking chair and a small chest of drawers. The walls had been painted a soft yellow, and curtains in a cheerful floral print hung at the window. "Wade," she breathed, turning to him in amazement. "How did you manage this without me knowing?" Wade's smile was tender. "I worked on it while you were in town with Margaret. Do you like it?" "It's perfect," Trinity said, moving to examine the crib more closely. Her practiced eye recognized Wade's increasingly skilled craftsmanship in every joint and curve. But why she stopped as the implication suddenly dawned on her. Wade's expression confirmed her suspicion. "I've noticed you've been tired lately," he said gently. and sick in the mornings. I thought perhaps. He let the sentence hang, a question in his eyes. Trinity placed a hand on her still flat stomach, tears welling in her eyes. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to say anything until I was certain. Wade crossed to her side, covering her hand with his own. Are you happy about it? Yes, Trinity whispered, then more firmly, yes, terrified but happy. Wade gathered her in his arms. We'll figure it out together, like everything else. 7 months later, Trinity gave birth to a healthy boy they named Thomas after her father. As she watched Wade cradle their son with the same care he had shown her tools that first day, Trinity reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The accident that had nearly ended her career had instead led her to a partnership beyond anything she could have imagined, one built on mutual respect, shared labor, and deep love. Her life hadn't turned out as she'd planned, but the house she now called home, with its perfect joinery and solid foundation, was a daily reminder that sometimes what appears to be an ending is merely a new beginning. When Thomas was 3 months old, Trinity returned to her workshop, baby nestled in a specially constructed cradle nearby as she resumed her furniture making. Wade worked alongside her when ranch duties allowed, their partnership in both life and craft deepening with each passing day. And if anyone in Monticello still thought it strange that a woman carpenter and a cattle rancher had found happiness together, neither Trinity nor Wade particularly cared. They had built their life with the same precision and care they brought to their craft, measuring twice, cutting once, and ensuring every piece fit perfectly together. 5 years later, as Trinity watched Wade teaching their son and 2-year-old daughter Eliza how to sand wood properly, she thought of the doctor's words again. You'll never work as a carpenter again. In a way, he had been right. She wasn't just a carpenter anymore, she was a craftswoman, a teacher, a wife, a mother, and a partner in every sense of the word. Wade looked up, catching her gaze with a smile that still made her heart race. What are you thinking about, love? Trinity crossed the workshop to join her family, limping slightly as she always would, but moving with confidence and purpose. I was thinking that some things break so that better things can be built in their place. Wade nodded, understanding as he always did. He reached out to take her hand, calloused palm against calloused palm, 2 sets of working hands that had found each other against all odds. We built something good, he said simply. Trinity squeezed his hand, surrounded by the family and life they had created together. Yes, she agreed. We certainly did.